Welcome to the deep dive. Okay, today we're going to unpack something really foundational. It's a part of constitutional law that, well, it acts like a compass for a nation. Setting out those big picture goals. We're talking about the directive principles of state policy from India's constitution, DPSPs. And our mission really is to get under the skin of what they are. Where did they come from? What are they trying to do? And maybe most importantly, how do they actually play out for you in the real world? So to start us off, what exactly are these directive principles? Are they laws, guidelines? What are we looking at?
Well, in essence, think of them as directions or instructions, perhaps,
Yeah.
a kind of roadmap for the government, telling the legislature, the executive, what they should be doing.
Okay, what they should do.
Exactly. And they also serve as a guide for the courts, interestingly. The Constitution makes it clear it's the duty of Parliament, of the state legislatures, to apply these principles when they make laws.
A duty, right.
And they're specifically located in Part 4 of the Constitution. That's key.
Part 4, why is that part important?
Because that positioning itself tells you something important about their role and their nature, especially when you compare them to, say, the fundamental rights, which are in Part 3. It sets them apart.
Got it. Sets them apart. So these are pretty profound ideas for a nation. Where did they actually come from? What were the influences?
That's a really interesting part of the story. The framers, they didn't just invent these out of thin air. They really studied constitutions from all over the world. They were looking for the best features.
So cherry picking the best bits.
In a way, yeah. And for the DPSPs, there's a definite strong influence from the Irish national movement, and specifically from the Constitution of Ireland itself.
Ireland. Okay.
But it wasn't just Ireland, while they were no doubt very inspired by Gandhian principles.
Which makes sense for India.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But you can also clearly see the fingerprint of the United Nations Universal Declaration of Human Rights in there, too. So it's this mix, this blend of global ideas and homegrown philosophy.
Okay, so drawing from all these sources, Ireland, Gandhi, the UN, what was the big idea? What's the grand purpose behind these directives for you, the citizen?
The core purpose is stated quite directly. India is envisioned as a welfare state.
A welfare state.
Right. And the DPSPs aim squarely at promoting the welfare of the people. That's their job. They direct the state to work towards securing things like a living wage for people, proper conditions at work, even a clean environment. These are big goals.
Living wage, working conditions, environment. Sounds quite comprehensive.
It is. And within them, as you touched on, we find this clear statement of both socialist aims, thinking about collective good, and also those Gandhian principles, focusing maybe more on, say, village self-sufficiency and ethics and governance.
That really paints a picture of a very ambitious blueprint. Could we get a bit more specific? What are some of the main principles the actual directives laid out for the state?
Sure. There's quite a list, and it shows the breadth of the vision. Let me give you some key examples. First, the state should ensure its people have sufficient means of livelihood, basic survival.
Okay, makes sense.
Then there should be a fair distribution of wealth. National resources shouldn't just end up controlled by a few.
Addressing inequality.
Exactly. And workers should get fair wages. That's explicitly mentioned.
Fair wages, good.
The state should also provide assistance, help in cases of unemployment, old age, or sickness. A social safety net idea.
Right, the safety net.
And it gets into specifics, too. Agriculture and animal husbandry. Organize them on modern scientific lines.
Forward-looking.
Definitely. Then there's a push to organize village panchayats, local village councils, as units of self-government.
Decentralization. Power to the villages.
Precisely. Also, protect monuments, places of historic importance, preserve the heritage.
Culture matters.
And the environment, safeguard forests and wildlife. That was in there early on.
Protecting Mr.
Education is key, too. Provide free and compulsory education for children up to 14.
Foundational.
And equal pay for equal work for both men and women. Very important principle.
Equality, yes.
Plus, free legal aid to the poor. Access to justice shouldn't depend on money.
Crucial.
It even promotes cottage industries, like home spinning, to tackle village poverty.
Supporting local economies.
And finally, looking outwards, the state should promote peace and security in the world. Settle international disputes peacefully.
Wow, that covers almost everything, from local villages to international peace. It sounds incredibly ambitious, really forward-thinking. But, grand visions often meet reality. Are there common criticisms, things people point to as, well, maybe weaknesses?
Yes, absolutely. Despite the noble aims, there are definitely criticisms that are often raised. One is that they're not properly classified?
Oh.
Well, the principles cover social justice, economic goals, environment, legal aid, even international peace. But they aren't always grouped neatly into these categories in the text itself. Some argue it makes them feel a bit jumbled.
Okay, a structural critique.
Right. But probably the biggest criticism, the one you hear most often, is that they are not enforceable by any court.
Ah, this is the point you mentioned earlier, not enforceable.
Exactly. So, for example, if the state doesn't manage to provide assistance to someone who's unemployed, as DPSP suggests they should try to, well, that person has no legal remedy. They can't sue the government based on the DPSP to get that assistance.
So no legal teeth, essentially.
That's the common phrasing, yes.
Yeah.
And a third point sometimes raised is that some of the directive principles may come into conflict with the fundamental rights.
Conflict. How so?
Well, fundamental rights are enforceable, and sometimes achieving a broad DPSP goal might seem to infringe on a specific individual fundamental right, creating a legal tension.
Okay, that not enforceable point really does sound like a significant weakness. If you can't take the government to court over them, does that mean they lacked real power? Are they just suggestions, nice ideas on paper?
That's the core question, isn't it? And it's a valid concern, but it would be a mistake to dismiss them as powerless or just window dressing.
Okay, why? What's their value?
Well, first, they perform a crucial function. They highlight national objectives. They clearly state what India as a nation is striving for: social justice, economic justice, education, public health. These are laid out as primary goals.
So they act as a public declaration of intent.
Precisely. Second, they emphasize that political democracy isn't the whole story. You need more than just votes. These principles aim to strengthen the economic and social dimensions of democracy. They're about trying to safeguard people from poverty, making sure basic needs are met. That's essential for real democratic participation.
Makes sense. It's hard to participate if you're struggling to survive.
Exactly. Third, they provide a sense of permanence. Governments change in a democracy, right? Parties come and go. But the idea is, whichever party takes power, it should feel bound to work towards implementing these principles. They set a consistent direction.
A kind of underlying constitutional expectation.
Yes. And finally, about the force behind them. You said no legal teeth, and that's true in court. But there is a force.
Oh, what kind of force?
Political force. Public opinion. In a democracy, voters ultimately judge the government's performance. And they often judge it, consciously or unconsciously, against the backdrop of these very directives. Did the government work towards fair wages? Do they improve education? Do they help the needy?
So the enforcement happens at the ballot box.
That's a great way to put it. The public might refuse to vote for a party that seems to have ignored these goals or failed to make progress. So what's fascinating is how you, the citizen, become the ultimate enforcer, demanding that accountability.
That's a really powerful way to think about it. The citizen as the enforcer through political choice.
Okay, so if they aren't strictly enforceable in court but carry this political weight, how has the state actually tried to implement them? Can we see concrete actions, real-world policies that stem from these directives?
Oh, absolutely. You can definitely see the influence of DPSPs in actual government actions and laws over the years. There have been significant efforts.
Like what? Can you give some examples?
Sure. Let's look at social justice. The Right to Education Act is a huge one. It mandates free and compulsory education for all children between 6 and 14. That's directly implementing a DPSP.
Right, the education principle.
And there are many welfare schemes specifically for the weaker sections of society. For instance, the government provides free textbooks to students from scheduled castes or scheduled tribes who are pursuing higher education, like medicine or engineering.
Targeted support. Yes. And consider the Prevention of Atrocities Act. It lays down severe punishments for acts defined as atrocities, specifically aimed at protecting scheduled castes and scheduled tribes. That aligns with the goal of social equity in the DPSPs.
Okay, so clear links in social justice. What about economic welfare?
Plenty there, too. The Equal Remuneration Act, for example, mandates equal pay for equal work for both men and women. That's straight out of the principles we listed.
Direct implementation.
And the Minimum Wages Act. It sets minimum wage levels for workers in various jobs across the country, again addressing the Fair Wage Directive.
Setting the floor.
Banks have also been encouraged, sometimes directed, to provide loans to poor farmers and artisans, aiming to boost their economic independence.
Financial inclusion.
And a really major one is the Rural Employment Guarantee Act, MGNREGA. It guarantees 100 days of wage employment per year to rural households who demand it. That's a direct attempt to tackle rural unemployment and poverty, a core DPSP concern.
A significant safety net.
Huge. Then if you look at legal and administrative measures.
Yeah.
Legal aid is now provided by the state in criminal cases if the accused person is too poor to hire their own lawyer. That's implementing the free legal aid principle.
Ensuring access to justice.
And the Panchayati Raj system, the push for village self-government, that's been rolled out across almost all states and union territories now. It's a massive exercise in decentralization, empowering local communities as envisioned in the DPSPs.
Okay, hearing all these examples, education, wages, legal aid, panchayats, it makes them feel much more concrete. But it also sounds, in some ways, quite similar to fundamental rights, which maybe people have heard more about. So for you listening, trying to get your head around this, what is the essential difference between these directive principles and fundamental rights? How do they relate to you differently?
That's a really important question, and getting the distinction clear is key to understanding the Constitution's structure. There are a few main differences. The absolute biggest one is justiciability. We keep coming back to this.
Right. Enforceable versus not enforceable.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Fundamental rights are justiciable. They are legally enforceable by the courts. If your fundamental right is violated, you can go directly to court and demand a remedy.
You have a legal claim.
Yes. The directive principles, on the other hand, are non-justiciable. They're not enforceable by any court. So, going back to the example, a worker can't sue in court to demand a living wage just based on the DPSP itself.
Okay, that's the core legal difference. What else?
Second, look at their focus. What are they primarily concerned with? Fundamental rights mainly protect your civil liberties. Things like freedom of speech, freedom of religion, the right to form associations, protection against arbitrary arrest.
Individual freedoms, mostly.
Mostly, yes.
Yeah.
Negative obligations on the state, in many cases what the state cannot do to you. Now, the directive principles, their focus is different. They indicate what our broader economic and social objectives are as a nation. They outline the positive vision for society.
So rights are about protection, principles are about aspiration.
That's a good way to think about it. Which leads to the third difference, their character. Some fundamental rights, as I said, seem negative in character. They tell the state what it must not do. For example, a person arrested shall not be denied the right to consult a lawyer. It's a prohibition on the state.
I don't.
Right. Directive principles, conversely, are generally positive directions to the state. They tell the state what it should strive to do. For instance, the state is directed to ensure people get assistance in cases of unemployment or old age.
I do.
Exactly. So, connecting it to the bigger picture for you as a citizen. Fundamental rights are largely about what the state cannot do to you, protecting your individual space. Directive principles are about what the state should actively try to do for you and for society as a whole to improve collective well-being. Two sides of the constitutional coin, really.
That's a really clear way to put it. What the state cannot do to you versus what the state should do for you. So we've taken quite a journey through these directive principles of state policy. We've looked at their really ambitious goals, where they came from, the criticisms they face, especially that enforceability issue. And we've also seen how, despite that, the state has worked to bring them to life, impacting your life through laws and schemes related to education, work, justice, and more. It's clear they're a really vital, if maybe slightly unusual, part of India's constitutional fabric.
Indeed they are. And, incorporating them into the Constitution was, I think most agree, a praiseworthy step. It laid out this incredibly noble vision. But, and this is the crucial point, their implementation is just as important, maybe even more so than their inclusion on paper. If most of these principles are actively pursued and implemented by governments, then that ideal of a welfare state, the one enshrined in the Constitution, it actually starts to feel achievable.
The gap between aspiration and reality needs constant bridging.
Exactly. And that leaves us, and you listening, with a really important thought, I think. In a society like India's, which clearly values both individual liberty, your fundamental rights, and collective welfare, these directive principles, how do we, collectively, keep pushing for these ambitious principles to be realized? Especially when, as we've discussed, you can't just take the government to court over them. It seems to rely so much on political will, on public pressure, on the informed vigilance of citizens like you. How do we keep that momentum going? That's the ongoing challenge, isn't it?